Hello, OneCanvas. Thank you for joining our live discussion for AAPI Heritage Month, hosted by the Canvas DEI Council. My name is Michael Chen, and I will be your moderator for today's discussion. So I'm not here to talk about Prisma, Smart Sheet Teams, so you guys can all breathe a sigh of relief. I'm here to have a very fun, very lively, very educational discussion with two incredible and aspiring leaders in the AAPI community. But before I bring our guests on, I wanted to talk about a few things our newly formed DI Council is doing. The DI Council is comprised of individuals whose experiences and passions represent a wide range of perspectives with the goal of representing all voices at Canvas. The council has been working with our DI consultant, Diverse City, to ensure that our policies and our practices are inclusive and impactful. So the month of May is AAPI Heritage Month, and I wanted to call out a few things Canvas has been doing in support of the AAPI community. With your help, Canvas matched $5,000 in donations to stop AAPI hate and Hate is a Virus, organizations that are committed to stopping hate crimes and combating racism towards the Asian American community. With this match, Canvas as a whole donated a total of $10,000 to these orgs. So we wanted to thank you for all your contributions. The DI Council is also starting an initiative to highlight AAPI businesses in a company-wide newsletter at the end of the month. Thank you to all those who submitted a business. Well, that's enough of me. I know you guys are not here to hear me talk. You guys hear that enough. So before we get started, before I bring our guests on, I wanted to just to let you guys know we will be holding the last 15 minutes for a Q&A session with our guests. So please feel free to submit your questions anytime during this discussion in the Vimeo chat. So let's get started. I'm excited for this. I'm actually going to bring down my notes because I need to get this right. So our first guest that I'm going to bring on is a creative director at RGA. She's an author, a speaker, and a mentor. She is the lead organizer at TEDx Culver City, a professor at Loyola Marymount University and General Assembly. She donates her time to several nonprofits such as Green World Campaign and the Lightbringer Project. She has contributed to several nonprofits such as, I've read that part. She has contributed to 2 books, Advertising by Design and Brand Quickies. She has also been featured on Think LA's Women of Color in Advertising. She is also the co-founder of Asians in Advertising. OneCanvas, I'd like to introduce to you Bernice Chao.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me.
So our second guest is a learning and development director, DEI advocate, mentor, and people-oriented leader with over 10 years of combined experience across learning and development, diversity and inclusion, marketing, partnerships, business development, client management, and consulting. She is a connector who loves to cultivate learning cultures to allow those to thrive and seize potential with growth mindset. She is currently the president-elect for the Association for Talent Development, NYC. She is also a co-founder of Agents in Advertising. I'd like to introduce to you Jessalin Lamb.
Hi, everyone. Happy to be here with all of you today.
Thank you guys for joining. Thank you guys for taking time. I know you guys, that whole speech, that whole intro just took me like 5 minutes to read. So I know you guys are busy.
Yeah, thanks for that. Really complete.
There were a few more things. I left that out. I did not know that you completed an Ironman, Bernice.
Oh yeah, that was a lifetime ago. But yeah, no, there was a time where I was really into endurance sports.
And then I know Jessalin, we've been talking about it, but we've been both going through some home renovations. So I know you don't really have that much time either. So why don't we start with telling our guests a little bit about yourselves?
Sure. So, like you mentioned, I'm a creative director at RGA, California. I'm located out of Santa Monica. Previous job was at David and Goliath, so I'm very familiar with Canvas and the amazing work that you guys do. I am also a mother of 2, so I have a toddler and a 3-week-old. So that's kind of my new thing that's going on.
Yeah, not too many Ironmans after that, right?
No.
And
Yeah,
Jessalin?
sure. And for me, as it was already mentioned, I do learning and development at TBWA. And I also wanted to share that I created Omnicom's first Asian ERG called Omnicom Asian Leaders Circle. I'm also the lead for TBWA's Asian ERG. And then there's an organization called the 3AF, which is it's Asian American Advertising Federation. And I'm on their Next Gen Leaders Committee, where we launched a mentorship program. So those are some of the extra things that I'm doing as well.
Amazing. Just a couple things. So why don't you tell us how did you guys get your start in advertising?
I kind of go over kind of the quick version of it. I was always a fan of art. I decided to go into graphic design. I was at Art Center College of Design in Pasadena as a major in graphic design. And when I was exploring internships, the second internship I ended up getting was at TBWA Chiat Day, which is one of the big advertising agencies in Los Angeles. And without any advertising background or any interest in it, I kind of just learned on the job and really enjoyed it. I loved it and kind of just never left. And I'm now 16 years in. And yeah, I love every single moment of it. I love the challenges, problem solving, and just the creative direction and the people you get to work with.
That's great.
And for me, I actually was always interested in art as well. So when I went to college, I minored in graphic design. And throughout my college experience, I ended up becoming the president of our AAF college chapter. And that was how I was able to discover the world of marketing and advertising. And I fell in love with it, just being able to meet the curious creative minds. And then my first advertising internship was at Wonderman, where I did account management there. And I loved it. Like, it just became so amazing to be around the type of people and the amazing work that we do. So that's how I fell in love with the industry.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, I know you meet so many creative people working in the industry. So can you guys tell us just a little bit about your experiences as an AAPI in advertising?
I think for me, it was I didn't really realize how much being an AAPI impacted my journey until a couple years in. I think, as a creative, I don't know about most creative departments, but every creative department I'm in, the percentage of women is very small. And then the minority percentage is even smaller. So most teams I'm on, I'm probably within the 5% in terms of female POCs. And I've never worked for a female POC ever. I've worked for a couple of POC men, but not many either. So I didn't realize how skewed it was until, kind of reflecting on my own experience, probably about like 7 years in. I was like, wait, I think there's a bias happening. A lot of this feedback I'm getting sounds really like, like, for example, during one of my reviews, I was told, you need to speak up more. And no one that knows me would be like, oh, you don't speak up enough, or you are shy, or you don't give a piece of your mind. Like, I'm very vocal, but I'm just not as perceived as loud. And I think that's because of my size, maybe the way I look. I also started seeing that, certain people would be invited to certain things. Like, the person assigning the briefs would have basketball playing at their house in their backyard. But as a female, you're not one that gets invited to that, so it'd be like a special club, and that club gets the premier briefs. And I started seeing that. I was like, oh, wow, these are things that, being who I am affects my career. So I would say that's kind of my experience being an AAPI as a creative.
I can share mine. So I can even share that I grew up in Poughkeepsie, New York, and it was predominantly a white neighborhood. And when I moved to New York City for college, that was when I was exposed to just the diversity of people. And early on in my career, I worked for a company called Multicultural Marketing Resources. And that was an introduction early on in my career to the diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives that all kinds of companies, including agencies, would lead. And I was introduced to organizations like Add Color, 3AF, ColorCom. And it opened a whole new world for me, because I never really pictured myself thinking about these kind of initiatives. And ever since then, I really became a champion, because I wanted to be part of the solution to change how people of color are seen and how to be able to create opportunities for people like us. So it's definitely helped drive my passion and motivation to continue to change it.
Mm-hmm. So would you say that, because I mean, I feel like I have a similar experience as Bernice in a sense where I didn't really start to realize my, I guess my ethnicity, saying that in the advertising industry until a bit later on. Bernice, what would you say made you start picking up on these things?
Well, it's like, with the couple of people that I could relate to, we started talking about, kind of what things that they're going through and challenges. I was talking to my friend where her partner, who made the exact same work as her, was getting paid more than her. And they were a pair. They were a creative pair. And I was like, and all the exact work. So it's like, how did one person get, almost, double
Right.
salary just because it was a white man to an Asian female? Starting to hear these experiences where like, I was told my ideas are cute and so is her, and I was like, wait, you couldn't say this to a man in the room. It's like you have all these weird prejudices that happen where they're kind of like, kind of these microaggressions that kind of happen where it's just like, you may be one of 3 Asians and they're confusing you for the other Asian and they think that's funny, and you're like, oh, am I the only person that's offensive to this? And then you realize when talking to other people, it's like, no, that's not okay.
Right.
And that happens to more than just me. That's an experience that's shared by a lot of people. And it's like, I think having those conversations and being open about, kind of what's happening, you're like, oh, it's not just me. Oh, this is maybe a racially motivated thing that people are doing subconscious bias.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing that. And Jessalin, it seems like from pretty early on in your career, you're pretty involved in sort of the multicultural, that sort of aspect of it. What would you say made you so interested in this starting out?
Honestly, it was more that I was looking for a job and they were hiring. And it was early on in my career. And then when I started learning about it, it became something really fascinating to me. And I just started falling in love with it more of just like all the opportunities that we can create and being able to meet chief diversity officers and leaders who I still stay in touch with from when I met them early on in my career. So it's been amazing to see all the achievements that they've been able to make and collaborate with them. But even to share, like I've had, like being an AAPI, like in the industry, I definitely have had negative experience as well. And I did want to share this because for anyone else that does experience this, like I've had this happen twice in my career where the entire team has been laid off except me. And then when I asked for like a raise because I was doing all the work for the team, they said that they didn't have a budget for it. And then a month or so later, they hire someone who's white. And that obviously is like a slap in the face. And it, being AAPI, it's like, it's definitely a red flag. And I've been sharing these kind of stories more because I want people to know the red flags when it comes to companies and be able to know to look for companies that will celebrate you, because I'm very fortunate that I am in a current agency at TBWA that celebrates me. And that's something to be mindful of too, being AAPI in the industry or just people of color, where you have to make sure you find places that are not just hiring you to check it off the list, but are like really happy to like see you thrive and grow and be successful.
That's great. So what are some tips that you can give to just AAPIs in the industry that feel like they're being overlooked, or they're not being as appreciated as they would be, or as they should be?
Like Jessalin said, recognize red flags, know that it's not okay, and that if it doesn't get better, that it is okay to leave. I think so many times it's ingrained in us that, we should be appreciative to have a job and that we're so lucky to be there, instead of like, oh no, that's not right. They need to treat me better. I deserve better. Of course, advocate for yourself. If that means asking for that raise, asking for that promotion, and, really making a stance on that, and if that doesn't happen, in the time frame or whatever they promised, or if they're not making those steps, know that you can leave. There are other places that will support you.
And to add to that, I would definitely say to look for mentors internally within your company and also externally as well. So even early on in my career, I joined an organization. It used to be called Advertising Women of New York, and now it's called She Runs It. They have an incredible annual mentorship program that I was a mentee for about 6 years. And it was just great to be able to meet other leaders in the industry who were able to give me advice such as like negotiating my salary or getting a raise, and having those people to lean on to build. There's a term called like building your own personal board of directors. So you're having those mentors and different types of mentors to lean on for career advice throughout your journey.
Yeah, I mean, I think at least in the beginning of my career, you're so scared of what you don't know. So I was a little scared to find a mentor because I was like, oh, I'm so green. They're going to look down at me. Like I don't even know how to ask for help. I think, changing the way that you kind of think about that. I feel like I was reading that white man, like in the industry, will have 3 to 4 mentors, and that's kind of one of the key successes of how they move up. Knowing that, and kind of building that network for yourself is really important. So even if you're not part of these groups or you're not a mentee, you can always reach out on LinkedIn. Find people that you really admire. I always say the worst thing that they're going to do is just not answer you, and the best thing is they're going to connect you. I mentioned that I've never worked for a female person of color, so I made it a thing to message at least 10 women that I saw on LinkedIn and just be like, hey, can we talk? Just because I've never worked with someone like you, and I would love to learn from you. And I think 8 of 10 responded. So, I mean, I highly recommend doing that.
Definitely, and I totally relate to you guys too. I think it was kind of raised and ingrained in us to be quiet, to be the hardworking ones, to be the ones that kind of are able to take the grunt of it, especially starting out in your career. You want to get ahead, and you want to, as competitive as the space of the advertising industry is, you want to be the one who does the work, and you want to be seen as someone that can do the work. But being able to be outspoken and kind of know your worth and show your worth is a very important lesson to have.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you both, as you mentioned it before, you guys are pretty involved in organizations just beyond your positions. How do you two know each other?
So, I think I feel like, one of the things that was great about the pandemic is there's so many great panels online, a lot of Zoom calls. I attended one called Ascend Leadership. Is that correct, Jessalin? And Jessalin was there too.
It was Ascend, like leaders in marketing.
Yeah, and it's an organization. Jessalin mentioned how much she kind of reaches out. She reached out to me and was like, hey, can we just talk? She told me about her background and all this D&I work that she does. And I just thought she was amazing. I always had the idea of creating an Asian in advertising group, and meeting someone like her with all this experience and all this knowledge. I was like, would you be my co-founder? And so that's kind of how we started Asians in Advertising. It's basically a free community with resources to help AAPIs in advertising to kind of ladder up and to network.
And I'd love to add to that to even encourage everyone listening today. So when I attended the Ascend webinar, I love connecting with people. So I'm one of those people, if we were in person in real life, like we would be networking, talking to each other before an event starts. So then I just put in my LinkedIn profile in the Zoom chat, and I was like, for all those attendees out there, if you want to stay in touch, like please reach out to me and connect. And that's how I was connected to Bernice. So we scheduled a one-on-one. And we connected right away. And like, I really admired her. I mean, she's a working mom for me, like my husband and I are family planning. So I'm like, that's already amazing to see her like have so many achievements as a working mom. She's a TEDx speaker. And like, she was just someone I was like, oh, I definitely want to be friends with her. And so like, we just got along. And once she asked me to be the co-founder, I didn't know what it entailed, but I was like, yes, we need a community for Asians in advertising. So it just happened. And we've never met each other in person, but so definitely looking forward to that.
Yeah.
And I'm
so you two have not yet met each other. Right. You guys have just been on Zoom calls and phone calls.
Internet friends.
Yeah, Jessalin is in New York, and then I'm in Santa Monica, so we're on different oceans right now. But hopefully,
yeah.
You guys need to post on IG once you guys actually meet each other. I feel like it's going to be a monumental event. So you guys mentioned it. Obviously, you guys are here because for a lot of different reasons, but you guys are the co-founders of Agents in Advertising. I wanted to read the mission statement of AIA just because I think it's a very powerful statement. So Agents in Advertising strives to develop a free community, create opportunities, and help elevate agents to higher leadership positions, to make space for agents within advertising to come together in a community where we are often excluded, connecting with each other in order to advance goals, careers, artistic, personal growth, help answer questions, offer advice, and have discussions about the issues that the Asian community faces as a whole or in creative careers. So that's a very powerful statement. Can you guys tell us how you guys came about bringing that together?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely wanted to first create a community to connect everyone, because there are Asians in advertising out there, but there hasn't really been a community to connect everyone together. So that was the initial idea for us to have that community, and just even elevating the voices of our community is really important for us to amplify the voices and create opportunities for the Asians in this industry.
Yeah, I mean, I think we recognize two big problems kind of within, and that's, you're kind of sometimes the token Asian, or, you don't have a representation that you can kind of learn from. So that's part of the kind of the community building, right? To kind of meet other Asians. We talk about how important it is to kind of share kind of what you're going through, or what tips you got to go there, or, what's not okay, what is okay, kind of those conversations. And then the other big issue is maybe you see a lot of agents that get hired in at the, entry level because they maybe have the resume or the portfolio, but you don't see that many ladder up, right? Or grow to the C-suite or to a director or manager level. And it's like, what happens, to all those agents that come in at the beginning and then they can't rise? So, one of our main goals is to kind of give resources to help with that as well.
Okay. Can you guys talk a little bit about those resources and what you guys have been doing?
Yeah,
sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Jessalin, if you want to take that one.
Yeah, so we have our first event the end of May, where we have a matchmaking event, and we are connecting people in the industry, agents and advertising together. And when Bernice and I initially talked about this idea, we thought maybe there would be 50 people interested in it. And since we launched it in March, there's been over 600. So it's really great to see it. And that's why we created two events on May 27th and May 28th, where we'll have breakout rooms and be able to have people network and just connect each other together. So that's our first event. And then I'll let Bernice share about some other upcoming events we have as well.
So then we have a second event that's a 3-part leadership series. So it's July 15th, the 29th, and August 12th. And, we're breaking this out into 3 kind of key moments in your career. So kind of getting started in entry level. So what does it look like getting that first job? And then kind of the first 5 years, how to kind of make that impactful. And then leveling up your careers are second one. So, that mid-level to director, manager, how does that kind of progression happen? And then lastly, we have elevating into the C-suite. So we identified some, huge, Asians in our industry that are really killing it. And they're going to be on a panel talking about how they got to the C-suite. So, we really want to just, show by example, what it takes to get there, and letting people ask those questions.
Yeah, definitely. That sounds so great. And would you say that, it's been, how are you guys getting the word out there about these events?
So right now we've been organically posting on LinkedIn. I'm so blown away by kind of the reception of, or just kind of the critical mass of what LinkedIn can kind of get you. I think our very first introduction post, I think my post alone got 30,000 views for that matchmaking event. And I was just blown away. I was like, I had no idea there was so much interest and how much sharing happened. So yeah, no, it's been word of mouth.
Amazing. I think I personally have not gone to this at all, but I think I'm definitely going to check it out because, I think it's just helpful. People are definitely seeking advice, and it's obviously so much more helpful when it's someone that's come from the same background or faces the same problems that you face, and definitely looking into that and all that. So, shifting gears a little bit, I think, it'd be kind of, I want to say irresponsible. It would be a shame if we didn't bring up really the situation that's been happening with the API community in the last few months, last year, starting from COVID and all that. How are you guys dealing with that situation?
I think for me, I've been really feeling myself in serving the community. So beyond Asians in advertising, that's also what even drove me to create our own Asian ERG within Omnicom and TBWA, and what else I can do to really help with the community and be an advocate and create opportunities for them. And it's great that I'm in a company that supports that, because my managing director at TBWA, they saw that I was so active and sharing all these resources to my company, and he asked me to mention all these resources on a global town hall. So I was happy to do that, and they were just really supportive and learning what they need to know for how they can be an ally and how they can also just attend events and be part of the community. So I've been feeling myself in that way. And another example is Bernice and I were featured in a Think LA podcast episode. And when I shared it with our ERG, I was really happy to see that one of my colleagues responded back to me one-on-one to say that, thank you for sharing your episode. Like, it really resonated with me, and it's been helping me really reflect on how to amplify my voice a little bit more. And hearing responses like that keeps me going to continue to help and think about ways where we can be part of the solution.
Yeah, I mean, it's so tragic. I mean, I don't think I actually really quantified like all the things that I've experienced firsthand, or the microaggressions, or even things that were probably a little bit like violence that I've just been an AAPI woman. And I think like when all this kind of stuff happens and I'm reading the news, it definitely takes time for me to process. My work at RGA has been so great, where they're just like, you need to take the afternoon off. If you need to call off the meetings, definitely take some mental health, time for yourself, kind of collect yourself. And to what Jessalin said, kind of making that, what is the good part of that? Like, how do you turn that energy that makes you really sad into something really positive? And that's been, reaching out, asking other people if they're okay, supporting these causes, whether that's donation or just reaching out and see if anyone needs help with their initiatives, I think has been really positive as well. I'm really just optimistic of all these groups of color coming together. Like, there's so many more ERGs kind of being formed around this, then it makes me so hopeful for the future, that I'm really optimistic that from all this kind of tragedy, something really great can happen.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to ask or add to that, like Bernice was talking about mental health. So I even took a mental health day on March 16th, and I didn't hear about like the news about Atlanta until the next morning. And my boss checked in on me. Like, it was just like a Teams chat where she was like, how are you? And of course, my default response is, I'm okay.
Yeah.
But then when I actually looked at the question, I started reflecting, and I think it's like, I've been so busy serving the community, helping everyone. I honestly didn't make enough time to reflect, to check in on myself. So I started crying, and then I told my boss, I was like, actually, I'm not okay. Like, I just said I'm okay by default, but I'm not. And like, she was like, take all the time you need. Like, let me know what support you need from our end. Like, if you need to like take the rest of the day off. So it was also just, I was really grateful to have that kind of support in my team and my current company, because it means a lot to just know that they see you and like they want to check in with you, and they're not just looking at you of like, make sure you get your work done. They really care about the employee beyond the work that you do. So I think that's really important, to make sure to take those mental health days. And we don't talk about it enough. So I wanted to like reiterate that it is important. And like, I try to even vocalize it to the team. Like, I even wrote a email to the entire agency to say like, I took a mental health day, and I encourage everyone else to as well.
Yeah. And I think that's so important. I mean, just personally for myself, we're just bombarded by all this news. I think every single day you're on NetShark, you're following all these different social media, and it's never good news. And it really makes you fear for not only yourself but your family. Like for my parents, I'm scared for them to go out and go to the market or go to work or anything. And I think it's definitely also ingrained in me to be a good son and to make sure that I show up for them. And that just gives me so much anxiety. But honestly, I don't really even know how to process it. I think, Jessalin, similar to you, if whenever anyone asks me if I'm okay, I'm always like, I'm fine. This is, I'll deal with it. But I think it's also just, it's so important for people just to check in on each other, because that actually sometimes it snaps me out of it and say, you know what, this is a problem and I do need to deal with this, and I need to go through my process of dealing with this. So I think that's sort of getting into our next topic, which is what are ways that people could be allies to the AAPI community?
Yeah, I mean, I see this question from Anon that Phil put in the chat, about microaggressions. And, I want to just make that kind of the first thing for allyship. If you see your coworker saying something like that, oh, wow, you look like so-and-so, or, kind of pointing out something that's, kind of offensive. Like I see, like, how do I get people to stop asking if I listen to K-pop? Like those things are not okay. And then if you hear someone else saying that to someone else, just stop them. Be like, hey, that's not cool. Or like, why would you say that? Or, someone says it to you, just be like, no. Last week I was asked if my name was a chosen name or a given name. And my response was, I'm American, I'm born here. So you make that judgment. But it was like one of those things where it's like, people just don't realize what they're saying. And I think so many times as Asians, we just kind of laugh it off and just be like, oh, it's okay. They said something really offensive. I'm just going to take it and just kind of shrug it off. I mean, just making sure they know that it's not okay to say those things, I think is one thing we can do, whether that's for yourself or as an ally. Also reporting hate incidents. I believe that, you can't make change if people don't realize there's a problem. So, organizations like StopAAPIHate.org, they make it really easy for you to report that something's happening. Or, reaching back and pulling forward, being available for mentorship. I feel like so often we don't see representation. So if you're available, even if you're not at the top, to kind of put yourself out there. I try to take in all the LinkedIn messages I get for people to want to get coffee. I have it on my website as well. Also, allyship and bystander training is another big thing. Advancing Justice has a 1-hour course that's totally free that helps with anti-Asian and xenophobia harassment training. And then, I have so many different ones. And then I also think educating yourself on the history. A lot of people don't realize things like racism or hate has been happening in America for so long. I'm still educating my family on this and my extended family, because they're like, I don't see a problem,
right?
And they totally believe in the whole model minority thing, and they think that's totally okay to be that. And I'm like, no, there's a lot of reason why, believing those things are holding us back or putting us against other races when we're saying things like we're a model minority and therefore like we're totally okay. So I do think those are just some ways to kind of be an ally for yourself, advocate for yourself, or an ally.
I just wanted to call out one thing. I think when you're Jessalin, when you're saying super mom, Bernice is able to get through that entire thing with
I if not,
no, it's fine.
We have resources on our website, asiansinadvertising.com. We have resources there, including, ways to support as well as ways to be an advocate.
Yeah, for sure. And we will be sending out all of these resources, OneCanvas to you guys. If you guys aren't able to get all that down, don't worry about it. Jessalin, do you have anything to add to that?
I'm happy to share some resources, like actual ways like companies can get involved and because beyond being an ally, like companies can get involved by definitely not being silent about it. I mean, making sure that you're acknowledging the situation and talking about what's happening, and even asking those communities like if they want to get involved to share. And I'll share, like, even in my agency at TBWA, we've had the DEI leaders, they would check in with me to ask like, what do you think is a great resource to share, or like what should we do? And we've created like listening circles for our community to create those safe spaces for employees to be able to vocalize what they've been going through, and that's been really helpful. Or even creating like mentorship programs, whether it's internally or externally, to support those AAPI talent. And as Bernice was mentioning, like education is really important. So it's not only leading, instead of leading on the underrepresented group to educate everyone else, make sure you're prioritizing, like there's always like a Google search to be able to educate yourself first, and make sure you understand what you can do, whether it's reading a book, a podcast, or definitely sign up for that bystander training that Bernice mentioned, because those are free resources that are out there and available for everyone. And also leveraging company ERGs. So that's something that it could be something that you create if your company doesn't have one, or join your company's ERG and see if you could be part of creating initiatives for your company.
Can you tell us what a ERG is?
Oh, absolutely. So a ERG stands for Employee Resource Group, or some companies call it like a BRG, Business Resource Group. And those are, for example, the Asian Employee Resource Group that I have at TBWA. It's been a great community where we even tap into our 3 pillars for TBWA is culture, community, and career. And we're working on how to support the AAPI community on those 3 different pillars. And even if it's also collaborating with clients, we've collaborated with clients to see how can we make sure that there's representation when it comes to the campaigns, or when it comes to career, make sure that there's career development opportunities intentionally for the AAPI community as well.
That's great. Thank you guys for sharing. I think those are really great things for us to walk away with. Really quick, before we sort of get to our last point, I want to remind everyone that we're going to be doing Q&A session very, very soon. So please, was it Anon, Luke? I've seen that you guys have asked some questions. If you guys please put those in, so we can do our Q&A session. You guys have given us just a ton of, okay, sorry. Anon is anonymous. Sorry. That's not someone's actual name. Sorry. But going back, you guys have given us just a ton of information. So very, very helpful. If you guys wanted to give us, one takeaway that people, could walk away with what would that be?
I'm happy to share, like, as a lifelong learner myself, and just being an advocate for learning every day, I want to remind everyone to make that time to educate yourself and take those actions to learn, even if it's starting off with like sharing a resource with your network, or reading this article, or just takeaways that you can apply. And it's important to really be a student of life. And there's a quote by Alvin Toffler that I wanted to share with everyone, where he says, "The illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn." And I think that's really important, because there's a lot of, not only are we learning, but we also have to unlearn a lot of things that we were taught, whether it's growing up or from like what we've learned in the past, and be able to learn every day. Like I say lifelong learner, because like my husband and I are like, we're going to learn until the day we die. Like every day is really important to be making sure we're learning something new, and for the better as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We're going to get into our Q&A session. So I think some of these we've already mentioned, but let me scroll through this and see what we can bring up. Luke asks, how do you walk the line between creating change in the workplace versus leaving when you feel uncomfortable? That's a great question.
I can tap into that one, because I have unfortunately experienced a lot of toxic work environments. And so I would say, to answer that question, it's like really checking if it's a healthy work environment to stay in. And there are red flags of that. Like and how do you walk between like creating the change is like, if you're speaking up and they're supporting the initiatives that you're doing or providing you resources, that's a place you want to stay in because they're supporting you to thrive and grow, which I'm fortunate to say that I'm in that place at TBWA. But in the past, when I decided to leave because it was really uncomfortable, was when there was racism, when there was like verbal bullying or things like that. So there's a lot of red flags that you would need to look into, and that would help make sure to professionally create your exit strategy for those kind of places.
Yeah, and I think it goes into so much of how much can you see your company really supporting what you want to do, and for just sort of the betterment of everyone.
Yeah.
Sure.
I also see the question where someone asked, being raised as an AAPI to work silently, how are you able to put yourself out there? For example, posting accomplishments on LinkedIn. I wanted to call that one out because that's something I learned later on in my career, because I definitely am one of those people where I didn't grow up being the loudest in the room, and I'm still not the loudest in the room, and I'm okay with that. It's more just knowing when to speak up and knowing when to self-advocate for yourself. And I actually learned it from others. So being part of a lot of communities, I met someone in my network and I saw that they posted a lot on LinkedIn, and they were posting like hashtag career development, career update. And I was like, and I noticed a lot of engagement, people commenting, people liking it. I was like, oh, that's interesting. I was like, and that actually seems like it would be fun to share career updates, whether it's an event you attended or something you learned. And I decided to give it a try and experiment it. So I tried to share updates on my LinkedIn, and I saw the difference where I'm one of those people that believe in like the law of attraction. You're really attracting more things of that into your life, and you're able to create opportunities for yourself by posting that on your LinkedIn, like whether it's something you learn or like tagging the people, leaders that you're learning from and insights that you learn from them. And for people who want to try this, I will say that it's like a muscle that you really have to practice and try, and you'll get used to it the more you practice it by like posting things, whether it's an article or something small on LinkedIn. Or I even encourage everyone watching today to share like a little insight or takeaway from today's talk on what you would like to take away or apply immediately to whether it's your life or career.
Yeah, I mean, so many times like people are reading your website and LinkedIn, and that's how you get hired or that's how you get recommended for jobs. They'll do that before they even talk to you. So, there's a great book called F Being Humble that you guys can check out. But yeah, put it out there. I always tell people that are getting out of college or juniors or people looking for a job, like, your website is the one place that no one's going to say that's not true. Like, I mean, like, put it out there so people know that's what makes you special, what makes you unique, what makes you a great candidate to be hired. Just because people are going to make judgments based on your name or what you look like or your picture, this is where you can actually put your, hard accomplishments down and give yourself a better chance.
Yeah, thank you. And I think specifically for the people of Canvas, I think it's very easy to sometimes look at what you guys do every single day and be like, this isn't that important, or in the grand scheme of things, does this really matter? But I don't think we should look at it that way at all. I think, really see the worth and the value of what you're doing beyond what you're doing, and be proud of that. Be proud of the things that you've learned, of the things that you're doing, because even if you may not necessarily see the value in it, there are people out there that will see that value. So we better be seeing a ton of Canvas people posting on LinkedIn after this. I'll say that. We'll get to the next question. How have you gotten your company to put their money where their mouth is in terms of promoting AAPI with it?
So I would say in terms of like what TBWA has been doing, they have also done donation matches, which has been really great to see that. And then we also, within TBWA is within Omnicom, our parent company, they have also created an initiative called the 3 and 5. And it's a really great DEI initiative to make sure that there's Asian representation. And it was a few months ago where there was a competition for anyone to enter a PSA. on how to change the industry and make sure that there's representations for Asians. And Admirasia was the winning concept. And now throughout the month of May, their PSA is running throughout like Times Square, the city, and throughout the city. So it's really great to see that a lot of these leaders are looking to put change that's more sustainable rather than just like hiring an AAPI leader and checking off the list. This is something of like, what can we do to change the norm, because we want to make sure that the industry is serving us and representing us properly. So people can also read about it more on 3 and 5, but that's one of the initiatives from Omnicom that I'm really happy and proud of to see that.
Yeah, same with RGA. We created a whole Slack group called RGA Asians, where they bring in speakers, panel speaker series, and then as well as, what changes can you make in your career? So as a creative, we are often looking at people who are acting in our spots, directing our spots, producing our spots. I think typically these have gone to a predominantly maybe white, centered like post-production, looking for opportunities where you can kind of bring in more representation there will be a great place.
Great. So the next question would be, how do you guys give space and make sure that AAPI voices are heard without taking away from other minorities or vice versa?
I will say there's room for everyone, and I can even share the example at TBWA where we have a lot of our ERGs even collaborating with each other, where they're, for example, in June, not only is it Pride Month, but we're also actually having our Asian ERG, our LGBT, and our Black ERG. We're planning to collaborate and do like some kind of fun like trivia night. And like there's definitely ways to collaborate and be allies across all the different groups. So it's just a matter of creating those opportunities, even if it's the first time that you're creating it.
And then I want to share one of the reasons why I think Asians in advertising was an idea that I wanted to kind of create a couple years ago. And I was so scared of being exclusive that it didn't manifest, because I was like, do Asians really need a space? I think culturally we're so, at least, for me, I'm so wired to be like, oh, I don't want to offend other people. So as much as we're saying like, hey, how can we work with other minorities? Also, how can we help our own as well? Definitely working with other minorities is a great thing, but also knowing that we also need a space as well, and our voices also need to be heard, I think is also another important kind of thing to say.
Definitely. Yeah. I think it's so important to sort of have that distinction where both can be true. We can both work very, very hard to make sure Asians are represented, but also make sure to include, other minorities groups as well.
Yes, definitely.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So on that point, do you ever run into issues with ERGs with prioritizing certain groups?
I don't personally. I feel like there's room for us all, at least in my experience. I haven't seen a thing where it felt like one kind of squeezed the other one out. I feel like we all have room to thrive. And also, other minorities are welcome in our ERGs. Like we are all allowed to visit the other ones. So, I've seen lots of voices come in, especially when all those, kind of when the Georgia incident happened, a lot of people came into the Asians ERG that aren't Asians and wanted to talk about it as well. So I think having that open space is really great.
Same. I have the same experience. Fortunately, especially now that I'm leading the ERG, there's been so many people across the different ERG leads reaching out and asking to collaborate. At first, it was overwhelming because I'm like, wait, I need to create the foundation first and recruit some other co-leads. And then now as we're starting to create it, it's been amazing to see just all the allies that want to be part of it and brainstorm ways to collaborate. And we're even talking about how we can create some kind of ERG summit where we all have sessions together, whether it's like a whole day event. So there's definitely a lot of great things happening. So we haven't had any issues on our end either.
That's great. That's great. So Bernice, you kind of touched upon this in our earlier question. So what's your view on AAPI representation in media or ads currently? What can we do about it?
I think we just need to be proactive and mindful. I think so many times where, your casting list gets shot down by your client, or your creative director is like, I rather, have this kind of person. Anytime where you're like, yeah, let's, why don't we start considering this? Why don't we consider other diverse talent, behind the lens, or, just like overall, I think as an industry, we could be better about being mindful about who we're hiring and who we're showing in our commercials. I think growing up in America, I remember the two people that looked like me growing up. It was like the Yellow Ranger and Margaret Cho were like the two, and then there was like that one fly girl on Living Color. I'm totally dating myself here, but I like knew there was like three until I was like in college, and I was like, that's so weird because there's so many Asians and there's just like the three people on TV, and I think commercials are going to start getting better about that. I think now we're being asked to kind of make sure that, we're being representative of kind of who lives in this country. But I think the more that all of us can, keep each other accountable. So if you're the account person on that, you're the media buyer, the strategy person, you guys all have a voice into saying who's on camera, who do we show, who are we working with?
And also to add to that, to not only have representation when it's May or when it's like an Asian holiday, to make sure that it's sustainable throughout the year. So it's not just a check off the list, to make sure we're covering it for like AAPI month. It would be great to continue to see representation, just seeing like an Asian American in an ad, just because if they're an Asian American and not because it's related to their culture.
Right.
Also making sure that we're being unbiased when we show Asians. I've seen a couple scripts where I was like, kind of made me cringe, like, oh, we're going to cast an Asian girl. She's going to be in a boba shop. And you're like, why does she have to be in a boba shop? Or, oh, this is an Asian family. We have to have a rice cooker in it. I'm like, yeah, but, they're still American, like we don't have to be stereotypical, like of how we're showing Asians. Like we all don't have to seem like we're first generation Asians. Like, there's so many different kinds of Asians out there. And, I just think we should definitely all be mindful of what we're putting in and, what we're showing.
Definitely. I feel like that would actually do the opposite effect of what we're trying to do here. Even though I love boba and rice, but that's just my personal preference. So the next question is actually from our CEO, Paul. So he's saying, what are some tips to make the work we do for clients more representative and inclusive?
I would say to make sure that you're including the different voices and in the room, like when it's like what Bernice was touching upon about like when you're planning the strategy or when you're talking about the creative. So it's not just your outcome of like having that representation in the ad, but also the planning process of it. Make sure that they're invited in the conversation early on and not as like an afterthought of like, oh, wait, what do you think about this? We need it by tomorrow. Like make sure they're part of the planning, invited to it, or invited into those client presentations to have representation there. And even in terms of like the recruiting diverse talent too, I would say what's really important is to make sure you're retaining them and make sure that there are processes in place of making sure that they feel like they belong in the culture and the company.
I also think right now, one of the things that from, us all being virtual, all our boxes are the same size. You're seeing everyone on the same screen. I think clients are more and more aware of who's in the room, on both sides. So I definitely think, on the agency side, and the client side, people want to bring diverse talent to the meetings because it's so much more obvious when they're not. It's not just the loudest person in the room and the person that's sitting closest to the client. Not everyone has an equal playing field. Everyone on the Zoom call should be expected to talk now, and everyone's video is the same size. So it's like definitely, I think bringing the representation is definitely something that, we're all kind of being asked to do now.
That's great. That's a great point. I never thought of it like that. Everyone's got an equal chance to speak up.
Definitely.
Yeah. Last question. Where do you see Asians in advertising in the next few years?
I mean, for me, we're going to try to make this an ever-growing thing, kind of meeting the community where it needs us most. After all our, events, we're having surveys of, what was working, what do you want to see more of? We hope that, I feel like I don't know what everyone's going through or what, everyone's looking for. I definitely want to see what we can bring that makes it the most helpful, whether that's presentation skills, branding skills, more leadership conferences, more networking, whatever that may be.
And for me, I would love to continue to use Asians in advertising to help amplify the voices. I mean, for example, the leadership series that we have in the summer, we're able to feature so many Asian leaders speaking on those 3 different events. And that's only the beginning. So it would be great, even people from Canvas Worldwide, if you want to be speakers for our events, let us know. We'd be happy to collaborate. So we want to continue to have that visibility for the Asian community and continue to create initiatives just to make sure that we're providing those opportunities for us.
Amazing. Thank you guys so much. As mentioned before, they, as Jessalin and Bernice mentioned, they do have a few AIA events coming up, matchmaking sessions on Thursday, May 27th, and Friday, May 28th. The Asian Leadership Speakers, Thursday, July 15th, Thursday, July 29th, Thursday, August 12th. We're going to be sending out a link to Asians in advertising, so you guys can look at those a little deeper. And I guess they'll need to register for it to join, right?
Yes.
I'm guessing.
Hit the Zoom.
Okay. So make sure you guys
add us on LinkedIn. If you want to talk to us, have virtual coffee with us, definitely reach out. We're always down to network and meet more people.
Amazing. Yeah, so we'll be sending all that out so you guys can have all this in an email wrapped up. But yes, we'd like to, we'd really just like to thank our guests for joining us and having such an inspirational talk. I've personally learned so much from this discussion. Jessalin, Bernice, thank you so much for what you're doing in the AAPI community.
Thank you for having us.
Of course. We like to give a special thank you to the DEI Council for putting this together. To Phil Chu working in the background. He was really the orchestrator of all this. And lastly, we like to thank you guys all for joining. Your support, your effort, your open-mindedness, your time continues to make Canvas a place where people feel safe and people feel heard. So thank you guys so much. And until next time, be safe, everyone.
Thank you.